Hey guys, David here from Ubuntu Tech Tutorials, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make an Active Directory domain controller using Samba4 on Ubuntu Server. Okay, so let's get started. So basically what I'm going to be showing you how to do in this video is how to make an Active Directory domain controller that you can use to authenticate Windows users across a network. So this will be creating a domain that users can log into, and it'll save their personal settings and stuff like that. Now, a Samba4 Active Directory domain controller is the equivalent to a Windows Server 2003 Active Directory domain controller, so just keep that in mind. This isn't the newest technology, but it definitely does work very well as a free server for today's standards. So this should be able to do everything that you want to do. Okay, so like I said, we are going to be doing this on Ubuntu Server. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go to Ubuntu's website. I'll leave a link down in the description below and grab yourself a copy of that. Here I have Ubuntu Server 13.10, which is currently out. However, the steps should be the same in older or newer versions of Ubuntu Server. Also, I realize that they don't have a 32-bit option on the website. If you do a Google search for a 32-bit version of Ubuntu Server 13.10, there is a version that is 32-bit if that's what you need. It is kind of hidden, but it is very easy to find on Google, so just go ahead and Google that if you need a 32-bit version. Otherwise, if you just go to Ubuntu's website, it should be just right there, where you can download the 64-bit version. Also, keep in mind that this will work on other distributions of Linux. I just prefer Ubuntu Server because, in my opinion, it's the best server OS that is Linux-based. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and install Ubuntu 13.10 server here. So I'm just going to select the language, so English, and hit install Ubuntu Server. Okay, again, select your language, English, select your country, I'm in Canada. Now it'll ask you if you want it to detect your keyboard layout. Most likely you have a US keyboard if you're in North America, or if you're in Europe, you might have a UK version of a keyboard. So I'm just gonna hit no, and I'm just gonna select it myself. But if you're not sure, you can hit yes there, and it'll just bring you through a few steps, and it'll detect your keyboard layout. So I'm just gonna hit US. Okay, so now it'll have finished setting up your network with DHCP, and you should be at this screen here. Now you can change the host name if you want. This is basically the computer name. I'm just going to type in Ubuntu Server. So this is what other computers will see the server as on the network. Once you type in your host name, hit continue. Okay, so now it's just gonna ask you to create a new user. So it's gonna ask you your name. So I'm just gonna put in David. You can make a username. I'll just make that David again. And you're going to need to make a password. And it'll ask you to verify your password. And now it'll ask you if you want to encrypt your home directory. If this server is going to be on a network where privacy for the user is very important, you are going to want to hit yes. If privacy isn't really a big issue, you can hit no. But to be on the safe side here, I'm just going to hit yes just for this tutorial. Now it's very important to have a working time and time zone on a server. So this time zone is not correct. If it is, you could hit yes. If not, you're going to want to hit no. And I guess the closest city I am to is Montreal, so I'm just going to hit Montreal. Okay, so now it'll ask you what you want to do for your partitioning method. You can actually set this up yourself if you would like, but for the purpose of this server, since it's not going to be a file server, and we are aiming more towards an Active Directory domain controller, it's not really as big of an issue to have separate partitions and everything. So unlike in my other tutorial where we set up a file server, I'm just going to hit guided and use entire disk and set up LVM. Select the disk. And it'll ask you if you want to write the changes to the disk. Hit yes. Hit continue unless you want to specify a different amount for the volume group to use for guided partitioning. And when it asks you if you want to write the changes to disk, hit yes. And it'll start formatting your hard drive. Okay, now it'll start installing the actual system itself. Now this part can take a little while depending on the speed of your computer, so just be patient. Okay, now you might get this message about an HTTP proxy. Just leave it blank for none and hit continue unless you need to access the internet through a proxy server. Now when you get this prompt about updates, I highly suggest hitting install security updates automatically to make sure that your server is always as secure as possible. However, if you know what you're doing, you can also choose no automatic updates or manage system with landscape. Okay, now at this point where it asks you to select your software, we're not actually going to install anything because we want the most up-to-date software as possible, which this CD might not contain. The only thing that we're going to install right now is OpenSSH server in case you want to manage the server remotely. on another computer after it has been installed. Hit continue. Okay, so once it's done installing the software, it'll start installing the bootloader, and it's going to ask you if you want to install the bootloader to the master boot record. Now, if you don't have any other operating system on the server, you should click yes here. If you do, it's probably better to click no. Okay, and once the installation is complete, it's going to tell you, and it should have ejected the disk itself, but if not, you're going to want to eject that and just hit continue, and it should boot into your new server operating system. Okay, now we have rebooted into the OS. So what you need to do is you need to log in with the username and password that we created earlier. And the last thing that we need to do to set up our operating system is create a root password, which will help us move along faster later. So to do that, just type in sudo space passwd space root. Now it's going to ask you for your password. Type in your password. And now type in a new root password. And it should tell you that the password has been updated successfully. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and create the Active Directory domain controller here. Okay, now what we need to do is actually go ahead and give this computer a static IP address, because servers should always have static IP addresses. So what you're going to want to do is, the first thing is you're going to need to type in su and hit enter. Type in the root password that we just created and hit enter again. Now we are logged into the server's root, so you won't need to type in sudo in front of every command in order to grant us root access. So the first thing that we're going to do is type in if-config and hit enter. Now you should see your connected network adapter. So it's not going to be the loopback adapter, it's going to be the other one that is there, that is connected. So here, mine is Ethernet 0 or ETH0, and what you're going to want to take note of is the broadcast. So in this case, that is 192.168.2.255. So the second last set of digits in that IP address is the most important. So in my case, this is just a 2. Normally it's either a 0, a 1, or a 2. Take note of that digit, because in order to set our static IP address properly, we need to know that digit. So next, to set our static IP address, I'm just going to type in vi space /etc/network/interfaces. Now I'm going to go down to my Ethernet 0 adapter here, the one that is connected, and I'm going to hit insert. Now I'm going to backspace DHCP and replace it with static. Hit enter twice, and now we are going to give it a static IP address. So I'm just going to type in address space 192.168. And then the digit that I told you to remember earlier from the broadcast, so that's a 2. And then .100. Now it doesn't have to be 100. Just make sure that the IP address isn't already being used on your network, because that'll cause conflicts. Again, make sure that the second last string of numbers there in the IP address is the same as the one in the broadcast that we saw earlier with the DHCP setup. Hit enter and type in netmask 255.255.255.0. Hit enter again. Type in network space 192.168, and then that digit again that we're remembering from earlier, .2.0. Type in broadcast space 192.168. That digit, .255. Hit enter. Type in gateway, and then the IP address of your router. So in my case, this is 192.168.2.1. Normally, this is 192.168.0.1, 192.168.1.1, or 192.168.2.1. After you've entered in all that, hit enter again. Type in DNS-name servers space the IP address that we're giving this server here. So in my case, that is 192.168.2.100 space. And we're also just going to put in Google DNS there as a backup. So that's 8.8.8.8. Hit enter again. Type in DNS-search space, and this is where you are going to create the name for your domain. My domain name is just going to be Goguda for the purpose of this tutorial, so I'm going to type in goguda.local. Most domains have the .local after them, it's just customary. Basically put the name that you want your domain to be recognized in Windows as .local. Once you've done all that, hit escape on your keyboard, hit colon, and type in WQ to write and quit, and hit enter. Next, we need to change our hosts file, so in order to do that, type in vi space /etc/hosts. Hit enter. And the next thing that you're going to want to do is beside the computer name that we set up earlier, you should see an IP address. This is actually a loopback address right now. We are going to want to change that to the static IP address that we just set up. Hit insert and just change that to the static IP address that we just set up. So in my case, that is 192.168.2.100. And then you should see your computer name. After the computer name, put a period and type in your domain name and then .local again. So now we have goguda-server.goguda.local. Hit escape on your keyboard, type in :WQ, hit enter. Now we actually need to write that into our hostname file too. So in order to do that, just type in echo space and then the computer name and domain that we just edited earlier in the host file. So in my case, that was goguda-server.goguda.local. Space greater than symbol space /etc/hostname. Hit enter. And now the easiest thing to do is just go ahead and restart the server. Okay, now once you have restarted the server, just again type in su and then your root password. And now we need to update the repositories and we also need to upgrade the system so that we have the newest and most secure software installed. So in order to do that, just type in apt-get update space 2 and symbols space apt-get space upgrade space -y. Hit enter. And it'll just start refreshing and it'll also upgrade your system. So this might take a little while, so again, just be patient. Okay, so now once it's done upgrading and updating the repositories, so now we need to install a bunch of software here. So listen carefully. So type in apt-get space install space git, so that's git, space build-essential space libacl1-dev space libattr1-dev space libblkid-dev space libgnutils-dev space libreadline-dev space python-dev space python-dnspython space gdb space pkg-config space libpopt-dev space libldap2-dev space dnsutils space libbsd-dev space attr space krb5-user space docbook-xsl space libcups2-dev space libpam0g-dev space ntp space -y to just allow it to go ahead and install it and hit enter. Now just a correction here, in libgnutils there's actually no I. So hit enter after that, and it'll go ahead and install all those packages. Now I'll also leave that command down in the description below in case you didn't catch all that so that you could type it in or even just copy and paste it. Okay, now at one point during this process, it's going to ask you for some information about your Kerberos authentication. So now for the default Kerberos version 5 realm, you're going to want to type in your domain name. So here that's just goguda.local. Hit OK. When it asks you for the servers, what you need to do is just type in the computer name. So that's, for this one, it's Goguda server, and hit OK again. And again, for the administrative server, you're going to need to do that again. So Goguda server, and hit OK. and it'll just go ahead and install the rest of the packages. Okay, so now once that's done, we need to download the Samba4 source code. Now currently the stable version is 4.1, so that's what we're going to be downloading in this video. However, by the time this is up, there might be a newer version out, such as 4.2. So if you want to see for yourself, you could go to git.samba.org and check what the newest version is there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to download the Samba4 sources. So to do this, just type in git space clone space -b space v4 -1 -stable space git / git.samba.org / samba.git space Samba4 and hit enter. And now it will clone into Samba4, and it'll start downloading the source code. Now, one thing that I did notice here is that the download speed from this JIT server is actually really slow, so this part can take a while, so just be patient. Okay, so now once it is done downloading the source code, we actually need to build the source code. So in order to do this, we need to cd into the Samba4 directory, so type in cd space Samba4, hit enter, and now we're going to type in /configure space -- enable -debug space -- enable -self-test and hit enter. Now this part might take a little while, but it should run through without any errors if you installed all the packages that I said in the beginning. Okay, now once the configure command is done, you need to type in make and hit enter. Okay, so now once that has completed, you actually need to go ahead and install these files to the system, so just type in make space install. Okay, so now once that's done, what we need to do is we need to provision our domain. So in order to do that, we're going to use Samba tools. So what you need to do now is type in /user, so that's usr, /local /samba /bin /samba-tool space domain space provision space -- equals and the name of your domain. This is the full name, so in my case that would be goguta.local space -- domain equals and then the short name of your domain, or the one that Windows is going to label the domain as. So in all capitals, I'm just going to put goguta space -- admin pass equals quotation mark, and in here you want to type in a password. So the password should have capitals, lowercase letters, and numbers in it to be as secure as possible. So just for this tutorial, I'm just going to put goguta server 123, and then once you're done typing in the password, just close it off with a quotation, hit space -- server -role equals DC for domain controller space -- DNS backend equals Samba in all capitals _internal in all capitals, and hit enter. And it'll go ahead and just configure the domain itself. Okay, now we need to start Samba. So to do that, just type in /user usr /local /samba /sbin /samba and hit enter. And there we go. Now Samba should have been started. Now keep in mind that every time you need to restart your server, you are going to have to run that command again in order for Samba to be started and for this to work. If you want, you could also make this command run on startup so that you don't need to run it every time. Anyway, so now just to be safe, what we're going to do is we're going to check the Samba and SMB client version. They should match. So in order to do that, type in /usr /local /samba /sbin /samba space -v. Hit enter, and you can see here that we have Samba version 4.1.3 installed. And then just run the same command again, except change the last Samba to SMB client and change the sbin to just bin. And you should see that they're both the same version. If they're not, you're going to have to sort that out yourself. So uninstall one of them and reinstall the correct version. Okay, now to just kind of confirm that everything is working properly, we are going to list the administrative share. So type in /usr /local /samba /bin /smb client /l space localhost space -u, capital U, %, and hit enter. And you should see something like this, and that means that the Samba server is up and running correctly. Okay, so now we're just going to check our authentication. So again, I'm just going to hit the up arrow on my keyboard just to get the user local samba bin SMB client, that first part of the command, and then after that I'm going to hit space // localhost / netlogon space -u administrator % quotation and then the password that you set up earlier. So in my case that was Ubuntu Server 123. Close the quotations, space -c and then apostrophe ls and another apostrophe and hit enter. And again, if it's up and running correctly, you should see something along the lines of this. Okay, next we need to configure the Samba internal DNS. So in order to do that, just type in echo space domain space and then in all capitals the full domain name, so that's goguda.local in my case, space 2 greater than signs space /etc/resolv.conf and hit enter. Now we need to edit the SMB configuration file, so in order to do that, just type in vi space /usr /local /samba /etc/smb.conf, hit enter. And now it's not necessarily the most efficient way, but your best bet in getting this server working is actually to change the DNS forwarder from what it has there to Google DNS. So that'll just ensure that the server will always work. So that's 8.8.8.8. Hit escape on the keyboard. Hit :WQ to write and quit. And there we go. So now we're going to configure and test Kerberos. So in order to do that, type in vi /usr /local /samba /share /setup /krb5.conf and hit enter. Okay, and change the default realm to your full domain name. So hit insert, and in all capitals, type in goguda.local in my case. Hit escape, again, :WQ, enter. And now we're just going to run a few commands to test Kerberos. So in order to do that, type in KINIT space administrator @ and then in all capitals, full domain name. So at goguda.local, hit enter. It's going to ask you for the password, Goguda server 123. And it'll tell you that your password will expire in 41 days or something like that if it works correctly. So again, another test, klist space -e, hit enter, and it'll just show you the ticket that you got from that login. So you could see here, if you get something similar to this, it is working properly. Now, since we did install NTP servers earlier in order to have the correct time on our computers that are logged into the domain, the time on all the computers should be the same and it should be correct. However, if you do feel that you need to edit that, you could do that by typing in vi space /etc/ntp.conf, and you can specify your own NTP server there if you'd like. But other than that, it should be fine to go already, so I'm not going to bother with that. So next you need to add user home folders. So in order to do that, we're just going to actually make the folder first of all. So mkdir space -m space 770, those are our permissions, space /users, and hit enter. chmod space g+s space /users, enter. chown space root : users space /users, And there we go, we created our user directory. So now we need to add that to the SMB configuration file. So in order to do that, type in vi /usr/local/samba/etc/smb.conf and hit enter. Go down to the very bottom, hit insert, hit enter twice, open square bracket, type in users, close the square bracket, hit enter, directory underscore mode colon parameter equals 0700, hit enter, read only equals no, path equals /users, CSC policy equals documents. Hit escape, :WQ, hit enter. And now the very last thing that you're going to want to do is set a no expiration flag for your Active Directory administrator password, or else you can run into problems after 42 days because you won't have a way to change it. So this part here is very important. You have to do this or else you will run into problems and you might have to reinstall your whole server. So in order to do this, just type in /usr/local/samba/bin/samba-tool space user space set expiry space administrator space -- no expiry and hit enter. And there you go, we just disabled the expiry for the administrator user. So now you are done and your domain is properly set up, and now other computers can join to it. Okay, so now let's actually go about joining a client to the new domain that we just created. So I'm here in Windows 7 Professional, however the steps are similar for versions of Windows XP, Vista 7 and 8 that are able to connect to a domain. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we need to go ahead and open up Control Panel, and we need to find our network adapter. Once you find your adapter, right-click it, hit Properties, go to Internet Protocol version 4, hit Properties again, and down here, you're going to want to hit Use the following DNS server addresses, and in the preferred DNS server box, you're going to want to type in the IP address of your server. So in my case, that was 192.168.2.100. And once you've done that, hit OK, and hit Close. Now that step is probably the most important step. If you don't do this, you'll have a lot of problems joining the domain. Next, what you need to do is you need to right-click on Computer or My Computer in Windows XP. And what you're going to want to do is find System Properties. So in Windows 7 and Vista here, just on the side, Advanced System Settings. And you're going to want to go to the Computer Name tab. Next, you're going to want to hit Change, choose Domain, and type in the full domain name. So not the short name, and in my case that is goguda.local, and just hit OK. Now, if it works correctly, you're going to be prompted for a username and password. Type in administrator for the username, and the password is the password that we set up back on the server. So in my case, this was goguda server123. And once you type that in, just hit OK. Give it a minute. You should get a new message welcoming you to the domain. So once you get that, just hit OK. And you'll get another message saying that you need to restart your computer. So I'm just going to go ahead and restart the computer, and then we'll authenticate ourselves through the domain. Okay, now once you restart your computer, you should see that it wants you to press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to log on. Okay, now in Windows XP, you're going to have a drop-down menu which will ask you what domain you want to log on to. In Vista 7, and I'm pretty sure in Windows 8 too, at the login screen, you're going to want to hit Switch User, choose Other User, and down here, you'll see it'll say Log on to Goguda. Now we're going to log in using our administrator account that we created back on the server because that's the only account that we have so far on this domain. However, if I just type in administrator here, you can see that it automatically wants to log on to the PC itself. So in order to override that, what you need to do is type in the short name of your domain. So in my case, that was Goguda. Put a slash, and then type in administrator. That will just ensure that you log on to the domain and not the computer itself. Okay, and now you can type in the password that you also created, so Ubuntu Server 123 and hit enter. And you can see now that we are now logged in as the administrator on the domain. Okay, so now I'm actually just going to go about actually managing the Active Directory domain that we created. Now this domain does have to be managed from a Windows client because as you could tell, we can't really do much from the command line on the Ubuntu server itself. So in order to manage this domain, in Windows XP you're going to want to install the Administration Tools package, and in Windows Vista 7 and 8 you're going to want to install Remote Server Administration Tools. Now the links for both of those will be down in the description below. It should be outlined on Microsoft's website how to install each one. If you do need extra help though, just leave a comment down below and I'll try my best to help you out. However, just a quick note, with the Remote Server Administration Tools, when you go to install the actual snap-ins, make sure to install the snap-ins that are pertaining to the Active Directory itself. The Active Directory snap-ins are what we need to use in order to manage this domain. So the most important ones, in my opinion, are probably the Active Directory users and computers, and also group policy management. Those are the two that are most likely going to be helpful to you if you're doing this. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just show you how to add new users and stuff like that. So in order to do that, you have to just open up Active Directory users and computers, find your domain in the side here, and you should actually see a folder for users. And in order to add a new one, all you have to do is hit create a new user up here. You could give them a first name. So let me create a new user here. Okay, and you can see that you have a few options here. Now one thing here, you'll see that it cannot set the new password. That's because on the Samba server itself, there's actually a password length or password complexity requirement. So I'm just going to show you how to turn that off on the server real quickly too, because it can be kind of inconvenient. Okay, so now back on the server, just to turn off the password complexity thing, what you need to do is type in /usr/local /samba/bin/samba tool. So we're using Samba tool to do this. Domain, password settings, set -- complexity equals off, and hit enter. And there you go. Now there aren't certain password requirements, so passwords can be whatever you want them to be. Okay, now back in Windows here, we're just going to try and create this password again. And you can see that the password complexity has been turned off. So, and we could see all the user properties by right-clicking, and I can also make this user an administrator if I'd like, which I'm going to do here. So now that user is a domain administrator. So let's log into that account so that you can see it's working. Just going to hit switch user. And this time I don't have to put the Goguda in front of the user because there isn't a user named David that is saved specifically on this computer. The only user David that exists is on this domain. So it's not going to try and default to logging into the computer again. So I'm logging onto the Goguda domain right now with the new user that we just created. Okay, now like I said, the other module that you're probably going to use is the group policy management. So if we go ahead and open that up, you can see here our domain is in the side. Basically what I can do in here is I can actually give certain users or certain groups of users certain permissions. And basically I can also customize their Windows experience, so the theme that they get when they log in, their background, what they have access to, what they don't. I'm not going to go too in depth in this because that'll take a lot of time. But there's a lot of stuff on the internet about how to customize the user's experience and how to use the group policy manager for certain groups of users and certain users themselves. So anyways, that's it for this tutorial. So thanks for watching and I hope I helped. If you like this video, don't forget to click the like button down below. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe for more, and also don't forget to check out my Facebook and Twitter page. Also don't forget to check out my website at www.guguda55techtutorials.com. All the links are in the description below.